Welcome to Concert Pipeline. I'm Steve Jones. Today on the program, we have Lance Lopez. I had the chance to interview Lance about his new album, Trouble is Good, which comes out on July 14th. Really cool album. He is a fucking badass on the guitar, and the only way for you to know that is to go listen to the new album and check out his stuff online, of course, and everything that he's done in the past, but really recommend him, and we had a really great chat. We'll get into that in just a moment. Before we do, I wanted to catch everybody up on a concert I went to just a couple of weeks ago. It was the day that my kids got out of school, and I had set up with my son to go to a show, go see Eric Hutchinson in concert, and at the Sweetwater in Mill Valley. A great little place to see a show, just intimate and cool. I've been to a couple of shows there, and I enjoyed it. And my son, who hasn't been to a ton of concerts, I wanted to expose him to some good music and to get him out to a live show. So I kind of geared him up and worked him into the idea of going. Which after listening to the album, a handful of times, we listened to it a bunch, so we would get to know the songs. He was on board with. My daughter did not want to go; she turned it down. So it was a daddy son night, really. And I'll tell you, it was a lot of fun. There was also a deal that he made that I would download Pokemon Go in exchange for him going to the concert. And I'm not super stoked on having games and that sort of thing on my phone. Having my kids plugged into devices, I try and push back on that as much as I can, but it seemed like a fair trade to me because I wanted to go to this show. I wanted to go see Eric Hutchinson play his album Sounds Like This in its entirety for the 15th anniversary tour, and I wanted one of my kids to join me for that experience as well. Atticus got to go, and so we went. We did some Pokemon Go, walked around streets, caught some Pokemon, and then went to the show. And the great thing, first and foremost, about taking a 9-year-old to a show like this, bare bones basics. Eric had his acoustic guitar, his electric guitar, and his keyboard up on stage, only playing one of them at any given time. So it's not a full band, not too overwhelming for my son who has some sensory stuff, and it wouldn't be too much. And there was no opener. So don't have to sit through 2 or 3 bands that you don't know or don't necessarily care about, but can learn more about other music through. This is a good one to take a 9-year-old boy to. So the show starts out, and we're sitting front row center because that's how I do it. That's the best way to see a show, right? And then, like after the first song or so, my son is kind of silently crying a little bit, and just like it was a little overwhelming for him, really. And so we stepped out. We went outside into the hallway, let him FaceTime with his mom. Gained his kind of composure, took a song beat, and then went back in. And the first songs, Eric started out with songs that were not from Sounds Like This, which is exclusively what I played for Atticus anytime we were in the car, right? For that album, I didn't play any of the other hits. So Eric started with some other newer stuff and worked his way back to 2008's album Sounds Like This. And so then we get into the Sounds Like This, and it's the songs that my son knows, and he was cool. And he had a good time overall, and I think he got perspective for enjoying the show a lot more by the time the show ended, and I could tell him like we get how many songs were left in the set because I'd taken a picture of the set list, and he could have an idea of how much is left in the show and everything, and kind of work his way toward that, right? So it was a whole kind of learning experience, but really a ton of fun. Eric put on a really great show. It's been a couple years since I've seen Eric Hutchinson. I think just before COVID was when I saw him last and interviewed him, but my son was into it. Eric played the album in its entirety. He had some great stories along the way as well, and and really made it enjoyable. So for those that are watching on YouTube, I'll share a couple of pictures. This is me and my son Atticus in front of Sweetwater stage. My son rocking out as you do when you're 9 years old, and then Eric taking the stage, playing some of his songs, and going through the songs that were really just an important part of my life. My son got a set list also. He got Eric's set list at the end. The tour manager gave it to him, which was really cool. And then he wanted to wait in line and get a t-shirt, one of the ones that Eric's wearing and that I am actually wearing right now. So we each got a shirt from the show, and he asked Eric for his autograph, and he got Eric to sign the set list to him. So it's really cool. I think I'm going to frame this along with some pictures and our wristbands from the event and make him a shadow box, because for my son, it'll really instill that he can do anything he puts his mind to. And I'm going to remind him of that. Sometimes he's really nervous and doesn't try new things very often. And so it's showing that he can do this new thing and have a good time and really enjoy it will mean a lot to him, and help him take on new challenges that he comes across as he gets a little bit older. So I want to play a couple songs from the set. I'm going to play one right now, and then I think we'll close the show with one a little bit later as well. And so there's no way to start out the 15th anniversary of Sounds Like This by Eric Hutchinson other than playing Okay, It's All Right With Me. Here it is.
You heard. Okay, it's all right with me. Some things are just meant to be. It never comes easily. When it does, I'm already gone. And I'm practically never still. More likely to move until I end up alone. And will my life continues into long. When Bernadette comes, I get lost on her time. She's much too sweet, and she's always gonna be. When I return to her arms and her eyes, it might not be the same, but it's alright with me. Where are my background singers? And okay, it's alright with me. Some people are scared to see what's happening frequently, but I would never stop from a fight. And heartbeat with the eyes of man. Often we go into hell, but I'm sick of just starting plans. I wanna spend the rest of my life. When Bernadette comes, I get lost on her time. She's much too sweet, and she's always gonna be. When I return to her arms and her eyes, it might not be the same, but it's alright with me. It's alright with me. It's alright with me. It's alright with me. Okay, it's alright with me. Whoa, it's alright with me. Whoa, it's alright with me. Okay, it's alright with me. And okay, it's alright with me. Some things are just meant to be. It never comes easily. When it does, I'm already gone.
That was Okay, It's All Right With Me by Eric Hutchinson here on Concert Pipeline. And that takes us to our interview, the main event for the day, which is Lance Lopez. Oh man, we really had a fun chat, Lance and I, and hit it off really, really well. I start out with a great, reminding him of a great story that he shared when I interviewed him 7 years ago or so. And I just wanted to hear it again. And I don't like repeating information in interviews when I interview people multiple times, but this is one that's just really, really cool. So without further ado, let's bring in Lance Lopez.
All
How are you
right.
doing today, Lance?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I'm hanging out. I'm here in beautiful sunny Nashville, Tennessee today. It's a beautiful June day. It's a summer day. A day I'm very grateful to be alive for and enjoy the great community here in Nashville and be creative and work on music and just enjoying music and life today.
How's the heat? Is it insanely hot there right now?
It's getting warm. It's nothing like Texas, you know?
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I'm most grateful for with with the weather here in Nashville is that that it's a little milder and a lot cooler. We've got the greenery of the mountains to surround us. It kind of cools us down. So, and I love it, because my girlfriend's from Chicago and this is her first summer in Nashville and so in the South, and so I'm just saying, just wait. And she's never been to Texas before. So I'm telling her, I'm just like, wait till you experience Texas summer.
Oh yeah, it's gnarly there right now. I know it's over 100, and it's just gross, right? So
well, yeah, it's pretty brutal. Where are you?
I'm out in California, outside of Sacramento.
Oh, dig it,
Yeah.
man! NorCal. Cool.
Yeah.
Man. Yeah, I got a lot of friends from that area, and a lot of really good friends, a lot of great musicians, and lots of dear friends from Sacramento area.
I'm sure you've played a good number of shows out this way as well, right?
It's been a while.
Yeah.
But yeah, usually when I came up north, I went to Modesto a lot, and that became like kind of a home away from home for me. And I have a lot of dear friends in Modesto. So that area kind of became my NorCal or Central California hub. So, well,
Yeah.
Cool, man. Well, thank you so much for having me on the show.
Yeah, thanks for being here. And you mentioned your girlfriend. She's a sword swallower, and that is a unique talent. So, did you meet through her? Like, tell me how you two met.
Oh, it's a very unique story. Yeah. Katy Ramirez, she goes by the name Lorraine the Thrill. And she's an amazing performer. Circus, sideshow, variety act performer, old school New York. She's a Coney Island veteran. She's actually performing up there on the 4th of July. And she just came back from there. She also performs in New York at the Slipper Room and in Chicago at the Green Mill and a lot of prestigious places. And, her background is sword swallowing, and she moved here from New York. She's also a brilliant makeup artist, has worked on major productions. She comes from that world. And so we met here in Nashville at a little group of friends got together, and I didn't know her. I saw her across the room, and I immediately went, oh God, I'm going to fall in love with that girl. When I saw her, I saw her and I went, oh God. And I was like, don't talk to her. Don't talk to her. Don't look at her. Don't talk to her. Don't talk to her. Hey, who are you?
You couldn't
I was like, don't talk to her. Don't talk to her. Hey, what's going on? Who are you? And that's all the first things I said to her. I was like, who are you? And so, yeah, I'm very grateful that she's a brilliant performer. She's performed here at Jack White's Third Man Records at the Blue Room. Here at Skull's Rainbow Room on Printer's Alley. She's a regular act there, variety act in their burlesque performance. She comes out and just pretty much kind of levels the building with her.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing. So yeah, so she gets me. She's a creative. She hangs with creative. She comes from that New York and Chicago creative art scene. So, we have a connection because I grew up playing the blues with Lucky Peterson in Chicago, backing artists like Otis Rush and Lucky and Lonnie Brooks and all these great Chicago, icons. And so she grew up in the suburb of Chicago. So it was really cool to go back with her and see an entirely different side of Chicago, one in which I've never seen regularly because I was always downtown playing the blues at Kingston Mines or Buddy Guy Legends, or, you know, a variety of those places, Roses or wherever, you know, back in the old days when I was hanging with Lucky up there, you know, and Lucky was my great introduction into the Chicago blues scene, you know, at 18 years old. You know, so, and there were other great guitar players down there like Albert Castigula, you know, who's part of the Blood Brothers with Mike Zito. He was playing guitar with Junior Wells at that time. So we had a lot of connection as young guitar players. Albert was working with Junior Wells. I was working with Lucky Peterson, and we were around guys like Luther Allison, Buddy Guy, you know, Guitar Short, all these great, iconic, just,
Oh yeah,
you know, brilliant players. So going back to Chicago with Katy was just a miraculous, so amazing happening, because I got to see an entirely different side of the city. She drove me downtown, and then it's like, wow, I haven't seen this park without the Blues Festival being here, or it just was so nice to go there and not be working and playing. And then I had friends that when they found out I was there, hey man, come sit in, you know, and I was there to meet her family and kind of see a whole nother side of Chicago. So it's really beautiful. She's truly the love of my life. She puts up with all of my insanity, and it's amazing. You know, she's beautiful in all of her ways, and inside and out. She's a spiritual practitioner. She's a makeup artist and a sword swallower, and a creative, inspiring, motivating artist. So I'm truly in love with this woman, and it's truly a gift to be that way, especially with, you know, the music kind of being released and love happening in my life. I'm just super grateful right now. You know, it's really cool.
yeah.
Thanks
Yeah,
for
well,
asking
congratulations.
thanks for asking about Katy Lynn. Appreciate it.
Oh, for sure, for sure. So interesting. I mean, and what a great dynamic you two have. It's so cool. Uh, um, going back, I interviewed you like 7 years ago or something. I don't know, 2016, however long that was. Yeah, a while ago. And one of the things that I remember us talking about that stuck with me, and I've interviewed, you know, a couple hundred bands since then, but it was just one of the coolest things was that your dad was in the Army with Elvis. And so I want to hear about that again. I want to hear more. Whatever you could tell me about, you know, kind of what you took from that experience that your dad had, because obviously
Right.
that trickled down to you, you know,
Right.
not you know, and not just, you know, that capacity, but I mean that energy, right? Like,
Right.
tell me about that.
No, absolutely. Well, thank you for asking. My father was a great man. My father helped a lot of people. He was a homicide detective. He was a police officer. He was a U.S. Army veteran, and he was a great individual. He was an inspiring and motivating father. He was very hard on me when I was young, and it really drove me, you know, to be better and to practice more. But my father was a great man, and one of the benefits of his you know, of not only his Army service, but being in Louisiana. So what a lot of people don't realize is that Elvis Presley moved to Shreveport, Louisiana, I believe around 1955. And he lived in Shreveport for almost 2 years. And he had a residency at the Louisiana Hayride. He was too heavy metal for the Grand Ole Opry.
Yeah.
And he was just, that's the story. I don't know. I wasn't alive. I don't know. But he was like too hardcore, you know. So he went to Louisiana. And so KWKH broadcast, and that's widely known, you know, KWKH broadcast the Louisiana Hayride. Well, my family on both sides, my mother and father's family, both would go. It was a huge deal in Louisiana. People would come from all over East Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas, because that's the Arklatex. So people would come from all over. So my dad actually met Elvis backstage at the Louisiana Hayride, and they kicked it, and they, you know, became friends and were hanging out back there, doing whatever, hanging out. So as fate would have it, Elvis was drafted. Frank was enlisted. He enlisted, my father, Frank Lopez, enlisted. And then Elvis went to Fort Hood, Dad went to Fort Bragg, and then they both were stationed in Baumholder, Germany, and they got to Germany, and it was like, whoa, bro, you're the dude from I remember you from the Louis. Oh yeah, and then bam, they were, that was the connection. As fate would have it, it's a crazy story. So as a child, he was more a part of our family than an iconic artist. He was my dad's friend. And I knew that the relationship was super close, how humble my dad was with it. He wasn't very bragging about Elvis Presley. He didn't use that in any capacity other than he talked about him as like he was I call Elvis Uncle E.
Yeah.
And I referred to him as that because he was my dad's brother. And I would ask as a child, how did he die? What happened to him? And my dad would just really eloquently sit me down as a child. So the thing is that when I saw the footage that my dad put on of, this Betamax old school, that's how long ago, that's how old I am, Betamax video, before VH, well, I guess VHS was around, but, putting on that 68 comeback special and seeing Scotty Moore and DJ Fontana and Elvis Presley and all those guys sitting in the round and Elvis in the black leather and then fucking playing. Oh, I'm sorry. Excuse me. I mean,
no, you can curse freely. It's fine.
Sorry. I know we're recording.
Yeah.
Anyway, seeing that footage blew my mind as a toddler. it was one of the most impactful beginning memories I ever had. And then to look next to that and see my dad and him in fatigues, and know, oh, this was my dad's buddy. And so in December of 1977, Elvis Presley was coming to play the Hirsch Coliseum in Shreveport. And our whole family was going as a Christmas thing to meet Elvis. And I was going to be born as a newborn and have a blessing from the king. And he died in a month before I was born. And so that was the first words my mother said when it was announced, was that she was pregnant with me and I would never meet Elvis. That's her first word she said, is that this baby will never meet Elvis, because we were scheduled to go and see him and my whole family. So those records were super impactful. Scotty Moore, James Burton's parents lived down the street. James Burton was also a very accessible, iconic guitar player that we have from Shreveport that, played with Elvis during the Vegas years. His family lived at the end of our street, and my dad would go and talk to him. And I didn't, I had no idea as a child. I just knew how impactful that music was to me. I knew how impactful that rock and roll was to me. I knew that, and I was so grateful. And one of the reasons that I say my father was such a great man, because he introduced me to the original real rock and roll, Chuck Berry, Little Richard, Elvis Presley, all these guys that were iconic, real deal rock. And that's where I started on guitar. So, because it was like, that's what these guys are doing, then that's rock and roll. And then, when my dad gave me my first guitar, it was like, here's a Chuck Berry record, go learn all these songs.
Oh, what a great upbringing. Like an influence, like to get out there and get after it. Right. And obviously you're supportive, as you're kind of finding your ground and getting started too. When did you start playing shows?
Around the ages 13, 14, we would do little junior high parties in North Dallas, around Lake Highlands High School. Paul Levantino, who now manages Erykah Badu, the neo soul goddess,
Oh, yeah.
Paul was a drummer, and Paul was a Lake Highlands High School guy. And so we had another friend, Chad Murray, God rest his soul. He passed away a year and a half ago, was my ride or die best friend buddy that played bass with me and Buddy Miles and the whole thing. He was my best friend growing up. And so once Chad began to start playing bass, Paul was a drummer. Well, he was booking us at high school parties. We were playing in living rooms, the gymnasiums, it kind of began there. And Paul was like putting these parties together. We'd play like the field party, the keg party, all the whole thing. And so performing kind of began there as like fun, kind of just being a kid. And when I went to New Orleans to live with my father, is once he saw how advanced, because I had those years in Texas where I had formed bands and really dove deep, had seen Stevie Ray Vaughan and B.B. King and Doyle Bramhall and Bugs Henderson and Albert Collins and Gatemouth Brown and all these iconic performers and went home and emulated what they were doing. And then I moved to New Orleans with my father, is when he saw how advanced I had become. And he immediately took me out to begin playing with different bands and sitting in and pushing me on stage. And I got hired by bands. I started doing gigs with musicians around New Orleans. I was sitting in with like Art Neville and George Porter, and I didn't even know who these guys were. I was just a kid at home playing Cream records. I was at home learning, Eric Clapton licks off Disraeli Gears, and then it was like, and my dad would take me out and I was playing, New Orleans, boogaloo and funk and French Quarter funk and learning how to stay on the one and grab a pocket, which then later paid off for me when I became a touring artist as a guitar player behind R&B and soul musicians and blues musicians. That created that foundation. So it was in the early 90s when I moved to New Orleans that like a professional real career, to where I went and played a gig and like didn't get a 12 pack of beer for it.
Yeah.
I actually got like $100, and it was like, wow, I can't believe I just made $100 for fuck, it was like, oh my God, so there was the French Quarter and there was Fat City, and I would play literally all night long. I was like, 14, 15 years old. And so, we would start at a happy hour gig and I would play with maybe 2 or 3 different bands. And that's a lot of what I see a lot of these kids and these guys doing here and on Broadway, here in Nashville, except back then it was, if you can imagine the meters, there was a lot of the French Quarter style music, as well as top, oldies and R&B and Motown and Stax really is a lot of what it was, on top of boogaloo, French Quarter meters, funk. So we would do a happy hour gig like in Metairie, on the edge of Fat City, then go to the French Quarter, do the 9 to 12 gig, and then go back to Fat City in Metairie and do an after hour gig from 2 a.m. to 5 a.m. I would load out at 5:30. I would walk home with my guitar, because literally the club, we lived in Fat City. Our apartment my dad had was like, Fat City was like a mini French Quarter within Metairie in Jefferson Parish. It was like a local thing, and it was really, really cool. And that's where I began playing music. And so, and I would walk home from the after hours gig. I would put my guitar down. I would take a nap for about an hour and then go to school.
I was going to say, and you're still a teenager at this point, right? And playing multiple gigs a day and squeezing school in on the side, right? So
that's how it began. I mean, it began for me, and I thought, just playing all night, and it created a work ethic that I took, into my career. And it was just, and that's where I was so grateful to cut my teeth and be in those bands and play in New Orleans and see all the craziness and absorb it. And it made, and just, and take it all in. I think my father never wanted me to be sheltered, or he was like, get out there and hang. That's how my dad, and you got to be, and, in some ways that was good. In some ways that kind of wasn't good. And I had to unlearn some of that behavior later on, because I took it into life and it kind of began to hurt me, but, and it still comes up and I still work on it. But it did help me to go out there and just kind of be fearless. And even though that's the courage thing, right? I was totally terrified, but I went out and did it. Same as when I went on the road as a sideman. It was like, go out there and play and hang,
Yeah. And so did you start touring beyond New Orleans before you were even 18? Like, at what point did you?
No, we moved to Florida briefly, which is a market that's really, it's always so great for me. I was moved to Florida and finished high school down there. And, we were down there briefly, and then we moved back to Dallas. And upon moving back to Dallas, I met Billy Gibbons.
Yeah.
And then I went on the road on the Chitlin circuit almost immediately. I had a slot to go. I had a pretty good little scholarship that I'd gotten from the band director at the high school I was at for Berkeley in Boston. I was considering doing that. And then we moved back to Dallas, and I was still considering going to Boston school. And I got the offer to go on the road with Johnny Taylor. And my dad left it up to me. What do you want to do, man? Do you want to go up there to Boston and go to school and sit in a classroom, play guitar? Or do you want to get on a bus and go out there and play with some icons?
Yeah.
And I was terrified. And dude, so they gave me 2 they gave me 2 records and I had to learn 36 songs within 2 days,
Yeah.
on a bus ride to Atlanta. So that's kind of how that looked. So it was a completely difficult situation, but because back then we didn't have iPhones and YouTube and all that. It was a Sony Walkman with orange foam headphones, and I had a Stratocaster on the headphone so that I could hear it with a notebook and a pen with the cassette fast forward and rewind and charting on a bus ride to Atlanta from Dallas. So, and then it began playing with Bobby Blue Bland, Little Milton, Johnny Guitar Watson, iconic people that, that I was around that later, that I had no clue that later on, just like when I was a kid in New Orleans, later on, I realized, who they were once my heroes were showing up backstage. And then, like playing shows with Whitesnake, David Coverdale's biggest hero is Bobby Blue Bland. I played with Bobby Blue Bland when I was 17 years old. And I would sit with Coverdale and tell him about playing shows with Bobby Blue Bland. Also Rod Stewart's biggest hero, Bobby Blue Bland. It was, these guys were my they were my these were my bosses. That's how I looked. As a kid, I was just so scared to show up and do a great job. So, anyhow, man, so that's how the Chitlin circuit began. And it was really cool. And, it just led to playing with different artists, which then landed me with Lucky Peterson, which then landed me with Buddy Miles.
Yeah. So in those early days, what would you say is like a mistake that you made that you kind of learned from, and how can you help you become stronger? I think that, probably as you're getting your feet wet and you're kind of trying to find your place, right? And you're among all these, great musicians. There were some stumbles, like what were some of your biggest takeaways from your experiences there?
Man, I think, just trying to hang with my heroes, and I think that, a lot of that was, and I see a lot of really good kids coming up today that, that know better, that have a better education and making mistakes that the same way. And I always try to, whatever mentorship that I'm trying to do with young artists and young musicians is always about, keep your head on straight, don't get out of control. And even if you see your heroes doing shit, you don't have to do that. And that's kind of the mistakes I made. I wanted to be cool like my heroes. I wanted to do what they did because they were the most amazing things I never even witnessed. It was like watching superheroes every day. Yeah. And so to watch drug use or the way that they behaved with women, were things as a 17-year-old kid, as a child, because I was a child. Sure. Those were belief systems and behaviors that I adopted because I thought these guys are great and that's what I'm going to do too. And you're
impressionable. Yeah.
That's the false reality. And I learned a lot of real hard mistakes, because I came home with the addiction. I came home with the problems and they went whatever they did. And I came home and I went, oh God, this is out of control. So I always try to convey that. And I think those are the biggest stumbling blocks that, that is a day at a time. It is a day by day, struggle. It is a day by day situation where we try to get ahead of it and do what we can do to stay okay. So I think that was one of the biggest blunders for me as a young, impressionable artist was, I need to do what my heroes did.
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of what I assume is one of your heroes, Prince gave you a golden eagle as a gift, and you shared a picture of that recently online. Tell me about your interaction with Prince.
I met Prince in 2002 with Buddy Miles on the Rainbow Children tour. He came to Dallas on that tour to play at the Fair Park Music Hall. And I was not even aware. I was working. I had just moved back from Europe, and Buddy Miles and I had resumed working together on some different projects. There was a beautiful studio in Deep Ellum, and I was also doing a lot of hip hop sessions at that time, working with a lot of great hip hop artists. And but I got a call from Buddy Miles, and he told me tomorrow we're going to meet Prince. We have a limousine arranged, and look presentable, and we're going to meet Prince. And I didn't even know Prince was playing in town. And so I went to Buddy's home, and a limo came and retrieved us I had to be there at 9 a.m., which I thought was completely out of control. I was like, wow, this is insane. So I was there at 9 a.m. and a limo arrived at like 10:30 and then took us all to the venue. And we went and we got to the venue early, pre-sound check, and we're walking down the hallway. And this is a true story. we're walking down the hall of the backstage area, and Buddy has his cane. And he's walking and he's yelling out, Prince, Prince, and he's just yelling his name. And Maceo Parker, James Brown's legendary saxophone player, comes out. And he's like, man, what's all that noise? And there's Maceo, you know, and I'm like, wow, there's Maceo Parker, you know. And so we're continuing walking down the hall, and a door opens right beside me. And I thought there were kids back there. I was like, somebody's kids are back here. And I thought a child was coming, and it was Prince.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh my God. And I'd never been in his presence. And he walked out of a door, and there he was 2 feet away from me. Yeah. And he just goes, hey, brother. And he gave me a big hug. And his wife at the time was in there, you know, finishing getting dressed. And he came out, and he just gave me this biggest, warmest hug, was glad I was there. Buddy gave him a big hug, and he goes, let's go jam. So Takumi, his guitar tech, who works with Candlebox and several other big artists. He's an big A-list, one of the great guitar techs, was there. And we talk about it regularly because I went through the guitars with Takumi, the Purple Rain Telecaster, the cymbal guitar. And, you know, and we had a jam. You know, Buddy played drums, Prince played keys, I played guitar. We had a jam at sound check. And it was one of the most amazing moments of my life. Prince didn't play guitar, he played keys only. He was playing bass, left-handed bass and keys with Buddy. And so the thing about that was, Buddy, I didn't know that, but Buddy Miles's father was a upright bass player and played with Prince's father. Prince's father was a piano player. Yes, he was a jazz pianist. And so Buddy, speaking of early beginnings, Buddy Miles was 13 years old playing straight ahead jazz with his father and Prince's father.
Wow.
So we were kind of doing that same thing. Prince was playing keyboard with left-handed bass. Buddy was playing drums, and I was playing Prince's guitar. So we were doing that same kind of situation, and it was really cool. And then they told me the story, and I had no idea. And I'm standing on stage at soundcheck, and they tell me that they played with his father, and they were very close, and they were like family. So it was a great day, and we went to a great after party, great jam after that. Speaking of Erykah Badu, she was there with her sister. We had a great jam at the after party, and you know, and it just continued on. I mean, he gave me, you know, at the end of the night, he gave me, you know, before the after party, he gave me a gift, you know, that was a token of our friendship, and it was the golden eagle with the diamonds in it. And he gave Buddy already had an earpiece that he had his jeweler make that would go over the ear. And so I was just presented with that, and I thought it was pretty amazing because, you know, he vanishes after a show in a limo, or he did, God bless his soul. Yeah. And then, you know, and so it was one of the first things that happened once he reappeared at the after party. He gave me that gift. And so I cherish it forever. It was such an amazing, he's truly the greatest performer I ever stood on stage with or ever witnessed, period.
I mean, what an incredible experience. It must have been out of body just to kind of be there and with Prince and using, you know, his guitar and just having that moment, you know. I mean, very grateful.
Buddy Miles introduced me into an entire world, and I would forget because it was Buddy. You know, he was Buddy. He was like my family. He was like another adopted father or another uncle, or, you know, he was like that. And so I would forget that he was Jimi Hendrix's drummer, that he was Carlos Santana's drummer, that he was Michael Bloomfield's drummer. I would forget because he was Buddy. And then we would go have these amazing experiences, and I would go, oh yeah, I forgot who I'm rolling with.
Now I remember. Thanks for jogging my memory.
Right.
Yeah. Talk to me about Rock to Recovery and kind of how that came about and your involvement with that, because that seems like such a good kind of cause that you're a part of.
Yeah, I'm supporting it and going to try to help out where I can. I think it's a great program. They go into facilities and they help people with music therapy. So it's something that I've been interested in. So I'm considering helping them and joining their team and working with them on various projects. Yeah. So we're still talking about it. We're going to see what's up. So it's a great cause. They go into facilities all over the country and they help people. And that's what I'm all about these days, is going and helping.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're going to do the Rock Legends cruise next year, but you did it this year too, right? Have you done that a handful of times?
We did, yeah. So, you know, I'm in the band. I'm in a band called Two Wolf, and Two Wolf is kind of a continuation of an old Southern rock band called Blackfoot. That was Ricky Medlock, Greg T. Walker, Jackson Spires, and Charlie Hargett. Ricky has been in Leonard Skinner for many years, and they both were original Skinner members, by the way. Ricky Medlock and Greg T. Walker were both original band members. So, yeah, it's a great situation with Greg T. Walker as the bass player. We have an original member of Blackfoot. So we do primarily our set is Blackfoot material, but I do originals. Chris Bell, the other guitar player, who was Bo Bice's guitar player during his American Idol era, he also does originals, as well as Greg has originals. So we sprinkle in our own material in between the classic Blackfoot material. And so what Chris Bell and I try to do really is we're not really, we don't want to be really a tribute band, but we just try to convey their music the most authentic way we can while delivering my own feel to it. You know, so I'm playing the train, the hit from Blackfoot, but I'm playing it as Lance Lopez would play it. You know what I mean? It's not like I'm just trying to nail it exactly. I mean, I try to pay homage to the solos and we try to get as close as we can, but it's all about the delivery of how would Lance Lopez or how would Chris Bell or Greg T. Walker play these songs in 2024. You know, and so that's the way that we're presenting it. We have new material that we're working on, as well as re-recording some old Blackfoot material. So Greg has been a mainstay on the cruise because, you know, everybody in the band is native. So it usually has some native heritage, except I think our drummer, Rusty Valentine does not, but Chris Bell, Greg T, and most definitely I do. We all have Native American heritage, and so NAHA puts on is part of the charity that the cruise, benefits is NAHA, the Native American Heritage Association, and so they put this on. So Greg is kind of has a mainstay, and he's very well loved by that organization, and they love our band. We do have a lot of Native pride in the band. I'm Apache, Greg is Creek, and Chris has, his Native heritage. And so we they did with Blackfoot. So, we really try to continue that heritage as well with Two Wolf. So yeah, we're really excited to play, the Rock Legends Cruise this year. I think Sammy Hagar and the Circle is headlining with Jason Bonham playing drums. Awesome. Which is an amazing show. Yeah. Billy Gibbons and the BFGs, they're going to be there. Tons of really great artists. So I'm just really, really excited to be a part of it again this year. We did it last year with Deep Purple and Roger Daltrey. I got to know some of the members of the Who, including Simon Townsend, who's Pete's brother, and he just was so loving and so complimentary and such a huge fan of Texas blues. And telling me how he and his brother both are huge blues guys. And it was just such a great hang, to be in the presence of great bands like The Who and Deep Purple. And then to play our set, we did our deck set last year. And Simon McBride, who is now the new lead guitar player in Deep Purple, is one of my longtime brothers. Like we go 13, 14, 15 years back. Yeah. We go back many years, and I see Simon on occasion at festivals in the UK. And the last time I think I'd seen him, I was at one of my last shows with Supersonic Blues Machine, where we played Ramblin' Man Fair, and I ran into him in Maidstone, England. And and so to see Simon join Deep Purple was incredible. So it was great to be on the boat with him. And he brought the entire band to see the show on the deck, and it was such an honor to play. And there's Don Airey, there's Roger Glover, there's Ian Pace. It was like, that's iconic. There's Deep Purple at our gig. This is, and every kid learns how to play Smoke on the Water, and here the guys are
right in front of you.
It was such an honor. It was such an honor. So. And we had such great hangs and so complimentary, and they're so backing of Two Wolf. They were so supportive of Two Wolf that it was incredible to receive that kind of love from Deep Purple, such an iconic band.
Yeah, what a cool experience. Yeah, so let's talk about your new album, Trouble is Good. It's coming out July 14th, and you had to kind of take a different approach with this one because I mean, a lot of it was recorded in COVID, right? And so you had to kind of get with the home studio process. Tell me that process of making this album for you.
You know, Trouble is Good came about. You're right. During the COVID era, we also were planning to do a record. We were trying to figure out what we were going to do. You know, I came to Nashville. I took a big break to get my wellness together. I went into a therapeutic community and began working in that, you know, and did that sort of work to kind of recenter my wellness situation. And then it was time to kind of go back to playing music. You know, it was like, okay, we're healing. It's time to go back. And we were trying to figure out, and then bang, COVID. You know, we had booked festivals in Scandinavia. You know, we were working on dates in Germany and UK, and bang, you know, like everybody else, you know. And so that's when it was like, okay, what do we do? And I moved into a house here in Nashville with two guys from LA. And they were kind of more in the actor world and the movie world and in TV, film and TV. And so it did begin the home studio process. It was like, well, we have this house, we have the ability. Joey Sykes, who had been a co-writer of mine during the Supersonic Blues Machine era and during the Tell the Truth era. You know, Joey and I had worked together. We met in Los Angeles. Joey Sykes sought me out. And we worked through Fabrizio Grossi, you know, with Supersonic Blues Machine. So once that relationship kind of went away, then it became just Joey and I. Joey reached out to me and he wanted to make the record. And then I began to realize that a majority of the connections that began with Supersonic Blues Machine and that last album really began with Joey Sykes. Yeah. And it was just being filtered through Fabrizio Grossi, which is, you know, and they're still great friends and whatever, and it's all good. But I then began to notice that. And so songs began, we had songs we had been working on even since the last record, you know, that we wanted to start finishing. He had songs that were skeletons and we began, you know, fleshing out ideas. And we did go to studios here. I had friends that Wes Little, Brian Allen, you know, these guys that have studios here in town, you know, Wes Little, the drummer, we went over and we did began tracking, you know, songs in studios, and I would take them home. And then it forced me into getting a computer and the monitors and the microphones and the whole thing. And I really got into it, and, you know, enough to be efficient, enough to lay down a vocal, to cut a guitar track. We were doing the work tapes in the house where we had the vaulted ceilings and I had the drummer with the big bass drums, and we were nailing some of the classic English sounds with the two mics on the stairwells. I mean, it was amazing, you know. So that's what we did during COVID. We stacked up Marshall stacks. We put the drums. We had two drum kits in the middle of the house, which for different sounds. And then I just began working, and I would bring guys over, and Joey Sykes was fleshing out ideas in Los Angeles. I was fleshing out ideas with my guys in Nashville, and we were just taking safe precautions. I would prepare a big meal. You know, I put on a lot of weight during COVID.
Oh yeah,
I've done a lot of work to take it off now.
Yeah.
You know, I prepared big meals and then brought the guys over to play music to flesh out the songs, and then I'd send them back to Joey, and then he would get a great artist or a great musician like Brian Tichy, you know, Greg Bissonette, Steve Ferroni, you know, icons. You know, we had Jorgen Carlson from Government Mule, formerly of Government Mule. We had, you know, Jack Daly from Lenny Kravitz's band. You know, Joey was taking my ideas back to LA and having iconic people. Then we went to New York. Then we decided, okay, we're hitting this wall. I moved to the House of Tone. We were moving forward with the record, and we just decided we've got to go to New York. We knew Bobby Rondinelli was there. Bobby had replaced Cozy Powell and Rainbow with Richie Blackmore in the early 80s when Cozy Powell originally left during the, I think that was the Graham Bonnet era of Rainbow. Bobby Rondinelli joined, and Bobby had also been in Black Sabbath. He'd also been in the Scorpions. And so Danny Miranda, also who is currently in Blue Oyster Cult, and also was the bass player during during Queen when Paul Rogers joined Queen. Danny was the bass player with Paul Rogers, was fronting Queen with Brian May. And so we had wanted to work together. So I was able to then orchestrate Bobby Rondinelli and Danny Miranda in New York. And we went to Long Island, and Joey and I went up there and cut, the title track. And so to talk about the title and the title track, John Hyatt, the great John Hyatt, and I were having a discussion during the middle of COVID, and I was kind of getting a little hopeless. It would the world was as just effed off as it was, and how everything was happening. And I called John Hyatt and we're discussing it. And I was talking about Bobby Blue Bland. And Bobby Blue Bland had an old blues song called I Smell Trouble. And Johnny Winter recut it. And I was talking about I Smell Trouble. And John Hyatt goes, trouble is good because we grow through trouble, and that's when we show up. When we get awareness around our behavior, or awareness around what's going on around us from an outside source, that's then when we're able to grow. I think the world grew through COVID. The world technology grew through COVID. We all started to do different things that we normally didn't do, and so that's what it's all about. It's about that trouble that hit all of us in the face, and then we all used it to do some different shit. Excuse my language. I'm sorry, Mom. Yeah. But my mom would be getting on to me right now. She'd be like, the language.
Come on. Always looking out for what's important, right?
And my mother would be, she's going to be like smacking me around after this. But anyway, what I'm saying though is that, we grew through that whole trial and tribulation. And that's what, I've grown through trial and tribulation, struggling with addiction and alcoholism and every emotional issue that I've ever, trauma and everything else I've ever dealt with that I've had to try to sit and heal. So I think we all were traumatized during that shit. We all received trauma. We all have trauma. The world was fucking traumatized by that situation. So it's good. Like, okay, good. Now we get to all go in and do some deep work and uncover some shit and get better and do different things. We got, we were pushed to the limits and we all started to do different stuff. So that's why it's good. It's good. So anyway, man, and that's what it's about. It's like, it kind of covers, the title track covers a lot of that. I had that groove and that riff. I felt like Danny and Bobby were the rhythm section to nail it. We went to New York, it was great. It was all good to cut all that over there. And so, we took an entirely different approach with this album, more of, it showcases more into the new wave of classic rock that's been happening that, that's always been embedded within me, and so it was really great to see a lot of new bands, and I was able to really help. And that was the other thing I did during COVID is I repaired guitar amps. I went into technical stuff. I worked at the biggest amp shop in Nashville and worked on iconic guitar amplifiers for Greta Van Fleet, Garth Brooks, Vince Gill, Keith Urban, all of these icons. I got to work on all their stuff during COVID. So it was good. Like it pushed me into that world. So that's a lot of, like I said, what I'm talking about with this. And so that's why I was like, well, let's do some different music. Let's do something that's not just a Texas blues shuffle where Lance is just going to burn down the barn, and eat some ribs afterwards. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. It's not it's like and we're going to probably go back and do that. That's always fun. And we love it. And that's what all my heroes and mentors did. But we wanted to showcase some rock and roll songs and do something different. Again, we wanted to grow. We wanted to grow during COVID. We wanted to grow during this situation. So it was like, why can't we present some new music? And Cleopatra Records was all on board to present it to the world because they knew me as a blues artist. They know me as a Texas blues guy, and I can do that. But you also categorize Lance Lopez in blues rock. So I wanted this album to be a blues rock record. and not just like, okay, my guitar has a lot of gain on it, but I'm still playing a blues song or some slow kind of ballady minor key thing. This was, and we have some of that on the record, but it was that, we wanted it to be presented in a way to where we know how classic drums and bass and keys and everything else sounds on it. And some of the musicians we presented together on these songs, like we have, Wild Country, for instance, we have Brian Tichy, the great Brian Tichy, who was in White Snake and Foreigner and Dead Daisies on drums, Jürgen Carlson from Government Mule, Buck Johnson from Aerosmith and the Hollywood Vampires on keyboard.
Wow,
and me.
okay.
So we assimilated these these iconic groups to present these songs, because it was like, if we're gonna play rock and roll, let's play rock and roll with guys that play rock and roll.
Yeah. Get them out there.
I'm very proud of the record. Jam with Me was a great song that Joey and I began to work on, and we had Greg Bissonette on the track, and the support that we have received from Ringo's All-Stars is incredible. I mean, Steve Lukather, Greg Bissonette, these are our brothers. And so for Greg to show up and to play on the first single is just what an honor. What an honor to have the great, because I saw Greg Bissonette as a 9-year-old kid play with David Lee Roth and Steve Vai and Billy. Wow. So, and I saw Greg, and it was just like, oh my God, to watch him with that band, on the Skyscraper tour with David Lee Roth, because I never see Van Halen I grew up in the van in Sammy Hagar's era, and I saw that band many times and was always up front. So that was my only experience to see that era of David Lee Roth, and Greg was the drummer. So if you fast forward 35 years later, and the first single from this album, Greg is playing drums. So it's very surreal for me, and I'm very grateful that has come to be for this album.
Takes you back to your childhood, right? Like, it just, what a cool experience there to have that. And with alongside the first single, Jam with Me, you're doing the hashtag Jam with Lance, where you're giving someone an opportunity to kind of win a jam session with you, right?
We are, and it's something that it was really cool, because I saw my good buddy John Mayer doing that, on TikTok or whatever, and how they were having jam, and I was like, wow. And so I had another good friend of mine, who's a Boston artist, Quinn Sullivan, young guitar player that was out with Buddy Guy as a child. We toured Europe together, and I saw a TikTok or something of John Mayer and Quinn jamming. And so it was Quinn Sullivan and John Mayer on one of those virtual situations. And so I thought, what a great thing, what a cool idea, and have seen it a couple of more times, but that was kind of my introduction to it. And I always thought how great that was. And Quinn was always super excited about it, that he got to jam online with John Mayer. And so we thought this was going to be a great idea. It is part of what the song is talking about. We're talking about Jam with Me. So Trouble is Good. We grew with the technology, like me and you were talking right now. So let's use that and let's jam. That's what we did. We want to have a jam session with with all our aspiring guitar players and cats that want to come and jam, man. That's what it's all about. Getting together, community, jamming. And we were shut down from that, man. That was cut off from us. So now, dude,
it's on.
It's on.
It's on. It's on.
And that's what Jam with Me is about. It's like, now that, okay, cool. Now let's jam. Let's do it.
Yeah.
So I want to jam, we want to bring, a lucky supporter in, and let's jam.
Yeah. Well, I can't play the guitar, but I see one right behind you, and I'd be a fool if I didn't ask you if you would jam to kind of wind out the program here. You can say no.
Well, so. I don't have any. I don't have anything. I don't have an amp around, but I got sugar right here.
Oh yeah, there we go.
There's good old sugar.
Got a little sugar.
I don't even know.
Let me take a picture of sugar real quick. Hold on. Oh yeah, that's awesome. I love it.
Yeah, Billy Gibbons always loved sugar in the Supersonic era. And so I put his pickups in it. We were doing a gig, and I had a buddy of mine make some in Texas, and he made some old Les Paul style pickups. So we put it in it.
Yeah.
And he was like, go get the white guitar. Billy was like, go get the white.
Loved it.
Just go get the white guitar, And I'd be like, that's Sugar. And so I'd go get Sugar. And so I got home off one of those tours. We were in I don't even know where we were. And I called Greg Savino at Sweetwater, the great Sweetwater. And I ordered some Pearly Gates, some Seymour Duncans. And, and so I put those in, which are Billy Gibbons' signature pickups. And I brought it back out a couple of weeks later. We went to another big festival we were playing, and I had the guitar and played it. And he was like, yeah, I never forget Gibbons turning around going, what'd you do to the white guitar? And I said, I put your pickups in it. I put your Pearly Gates in it. So, and then also really quick story about Sugar is there's some locking tuners on Sugar. There's like a bridge on here so I walked into a NAMM party. This is connected to Steve Vai. I walked into a NAMM party in Anaheim, and they were like, bring your Flying V. So, and it was really stock at that time. It was just a straight 67 reissue. So I bring it in with me. And then as soon as I walk in the party, they pull it out of my hand. And then they take me to meet all these iconic people that are in the studio, and we're having this big mixer. And then I go into this other room, and it's laid down on the table, and Steve Vai's legendary guitar tech, Thomas Nordig, is there dismantling the bridge and putting a new bridge and new tuners and and I'm like, what'd you do to my guitar? Dude, like, what are you doing to my guitar? And so the Graph Tech company they all like swooped in on me, and they're like, Lance, we're going to do this. We're doing this to your guitar. And, and then it's Steve Vai's guy. So what are you going to say? Like,
you're not going to say anything, right?
Some rando, amateur, like this dude works at, his buddy's garage. This was like, so you're going, so they just graphite saddles and a different bridge and a locking tuner. So we have it on there, and it's really cool. And we put the Pearly Gates in there. So that's a really cool story about Sugar, man. So anyhow, bro, thanks so much for having me, man. It's been such a blast hanging with you today. I hope you're having some beautiful weather out there in Sacramento today. And everybody listening, please support Trouble is Good. It's available pre-order now. Comes out July 14th. Orange vinyl, limited edition. Please get a copy of that orange vinyl. And if you do get a copy, I also want to offer this. We'll give you the House of Tone address. You can ship it to me. I'll sign it and send it back to you. So, nice. And then we have the hashtag Jam with Lance. We're going to be jamming. We're going to be launching this contest. We want everybody to get involved because I want to jam with some cats, man. I want to jam with you, man. So let's jam.
Yeah, I love it. And the new album's great. And I know you're excited for it to get out and, play at shows with it and everything. And you're an amazing guitarist. And thank you, Lance, for taking the time today. I really appreciate it. Thank you
so much. I look forward to seeing you soon, man. It's so great to talk to you again. Thanks. Thank you so much. Good to see you, man.
Thanks, Lance. You have a good one, okay?
You too, man. Ciao.
That was my interview with Lance Lopez here on Concert Pipeline. And that takes us to the final segment on the program, the music news. A couple of stories to wind us out here today. Really, they're almost all exclusively from Glastonbury Festival. So we're going to dig right in because the Glastonbury Festival was the lineup and the who's who of, anybody who was at a concert was at Glastonbury Festival. So let's start out with this first one. Britney Spears fans react after she doesn't appear with Elton John. So there have been rumors about her performing with Elton John for her first appearance in 5 years as part of Elton John's set. The story is that didn't happen, and people are not stoked about it. John was confirmed to be joined by 4 special guests at his headline set, which included The Killer's Brandon Flowers, among others. And he did Tiny Dancer with Brandon Flowers, and he did some other songs with some other folks. And Britney fans shared their disappointment online at her not returning to the stage. And then others defended the singer for the no-show, as there was no expectation that she would be there. This is what a rumor is, right? So that's how that goes. All right. Paul McCartney was at Glastonbury Festival. There was another rumor here, that he was going to be joining Guns N' Roses on stage for their set. That didn't happen, but fans did see him soaking up the sun and enjoying the festival. And someone who did join Guns N' Roses on stage was Mr. Dave Grohl to play Paradise City with Guns N' Roses, which is awesome. This is not the first time that Dave Grohl has joined Guns N' Roses on stage playing Paradise City. I actually got the chance to see Dave Grohl playing Paradise City with Guns N' Roses at Bottle Rock just a couple of years back, and it was super close. Got great video. Video it was put online and went viral until YouTube took it down for copyright purposes, and Rolling Stone had even used my video from that performance as their part of their article on Guns N' Roses set at Bottle Rock. So that was one of my highlights of my life as a rock journalist of sorts, getting to see that in the first place. We have more on Dave Grohl in a little bit. The Dave Grohl news is not over, but pretty cool that he came out and played with them as well. And I would have expected Paul McCartney to be there too, because him and Dave Grohl are really cool, but didn't come out for a performance. All right. Pink was stunned as fan throws mother's ashes on stage at BST Hyde Park. So I don't think that's Glastonbury, but it's close enough, right? But she was performing her headline set at Hyde Park in London over the weekend when she noticed a clear bag being thrown by her feet. The moment took place during a rendition of her 2001 hit, Just Like a Pill. And in footage shared by fans at the show, the singer can be seen bending down to look at the bag and briefly stopping singing as she tried to work out what the contents were. Wait, is this your mom? She asked, giving confused looks at someone in the crowd and nervously laughing. I don't know how I feel about this. Pink is then seen picking up the bag and moving it to the side of the stage before continuing with the song. There's footage, of course, because people record everything. And fans have shared their thoughts on the moment. She handled it well, because I definitely be mad that someone handed me their mom's ashes. I just saw another video of a guy coming out to his mom in front of Babe Rexa. So yes, boundaries. I understand why some celebrities are standoffish now. So someone offers some insight into what supposedly made the fan throw the ashes. Okay, so my friends are stood near this lady. And the backstory is her mom couldn't get out much as she was so ill when live. So this lady takes her ashes places. So she gets out now, and it's not everyone's cup of tea, but it gives this woman comfort. Then that's up to her. So no, not really. You don't get to take your mom to shows and posthumous and throw her on stage to at concerts at the performer. Nope, not cool. I shut that one down. I disagree. Nope. Okay. And then the last story I have for today's episode of Concert Pipeline, back to Dave Grohl. Yes, we try and wrap every episode with Dave Grohl story or Foo Fighters if we can. Dave Grohl caught the train to Glastonbury. They had a not so secret set. And so they were scheduled to perform as the Churn-Ups, and it was a spectacular affair. But Grohl has also made headlines for his transport of choice, the Great Western Rail. They took the 11 a.m. train from London to Glastonbury, getting off at Bath Spa, where minibuses then took the band to the festival. And even rock royalty knows that there's no better way to travel to Glastonbury than by train. GWR tweeted, "You never know who's going to churn up and on board our trains." And so Grohl has performed 3 times so far in Glastonbury, and so they put on a good set. I think a shorter one also, but there's a second Dave Grohl story. He apparently the other night, about a week ago, at Rogers in Arkansas. They had a huge set, and in our episode last week we talked about how they're working in their 10-minute song The Teacher, which is quite a commitment for a set list. Well, that came out in Foo Fighters Encore, and while Everlong was on the set list at the bottom, that was not played, and that is breaking news for any Foo Fighters fans because they always close their sets out with Everlong. It's just how they end their show. Dating back to a handful of years ago when I saw Foo Fighters at Bottle Rock, they actually were playing Everlong, and then the set had gone just a couple minutes too long. They were in the middle of Everlong, and it was cut off by curfew, which hit at 10 p.m. sharp. So they kept playing the song. And as someone who's right up against the stage, I didn't even notice that the sound was cut out because I was hearing it live right there, right? I didn't know that they had cut the sound out really when I was watching it, but they play that every time. And so Dave addressed the Everlong drama from the other night, and this is what he has to say.
All these weird motherfuckers start blowing up my daughter's TikTok like, we need to have a talk. Your dad didn't fucking play Everlong last night, and I just want you to know I got married to that song, and I can't believe I came all the way down there and you didn't play that fucking song. Fuck you, motherfuckers. Oh my God. So tonight we're gonna play it 10 times. How about that?
I think he went on to say that there's only been 4 times that they didn't play it like ever or something. People were nerding out over Everlong. It's how they choose to end the show. And they didn't have the opportunity to do it because the teacher. So they chose the teacher over Everlong. He just went on with the set list, and it was apparently too much packed into the evening before curfew hit again. Right. So, all right. That is our show for today. Thank you for tuning in. Next week on the Concert Pipeline, we have Vonda Shepard joining the program. You may not know Vonda, but she has a great voice. If you were a fan of Ally McBeal, you absolutely know Vonda because she was very much a big part of that show, produced over 500 songs for Ally McBeal, and sang the theme song. It was all about that show, and very much a part of it. We'll dig into that and more next week with Vonda Shepard. So that is the program for today. We're going to close this out with one more song from Eric Hutchinson's show at Sweetwater in Mill Valley. This is the song he played in his encore, and this is Rock and Roll. So for all of us here at Concert Pipeline, I'm Steve Jones. We'll catch you next time.
I was talking to the guys backstage. This is the best show we've had all year, so thank you so much for coming out. Thank you for being here, everybody. I hope you've had a great time. I hope you'll sing along with this last song. It's called Rock and Roll. If you want to stand up and dance, you could. I'm not going to stop you. He's been waiting around for the weekend, figuring it for this weekend. Fancy drinks and $50 color charge. Lately it's been a big hassle. Heineken in Newcastle to make sure he's fitting in and living large. Disregard the life really paying what it's probably like, cause it's not hard. His charm is gonna get him through the night. So if you wanna rock, he rocks. If you wanna roll, he rolls. He'll roll with the punches as long as he feels like he's in control. And if you wanna stay, he stays. If you wanna go, he goes. Doesn't care how he gets there, long as he gets somewhere he knows. Oh no, na 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 na. Everybody now. Na 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 na. See her, heavy makeup and cut t-shirt. Every girl out wants to be her. But they look the same already, why just reading the magazine secrets, forgetting the top of 30 gets. Cause if she comes on all alone at night to buy sits among us, swimming in her hips and the look she gives, it's all it does. If only in the morning she knew where she lived. Cause if she wanna rock, she rocks. If she wanna roll, she rolls. She'll go in the punches long as she feels like she's in control. If she If she wanna go, she goes. Doesn't care how she gets there, as long as she gets somewhere she knows. Oh no, na 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 na. Everybody now. Na 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 na. In a winter on the brink, from drink to drink, and at the bar, we cast the floor, side to side. It's getting hot against the block to see how far it's gonna go. All depends on tips and friends and grab a cab, another chance at cheap romance. Doesn't count 'cause the room is spinning, nothing to lose, and I could both I'm in. They fall in love as they fall in bed to sing. If they wanna ride, they ride. If they wanna roll, they roll. You go in the punches as long as they feel like they're in control. If they wanna stay, they stay. If they wanna go, they go. Don't care how they get there, as long as they get somewhere to go. No. Na 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 na. Everybody now. Na 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 na. If they wanna rock it out, I said if they wanna roll, they roll. They roll with the punches, as long as they get somewhere to know. If they wanna stay, they stay. If they wanna go, they go. Don't care how they get there, as long as they get somewhere to go. No, na 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 na. Everybody. Na 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 na. Na 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 na. Na 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 na. Thank you, guys. My name's Eric Hutchinson. This has been Sounds Like This. Thanks for being